Let's talk about how you can position yourself as an expert and what it is that innovative thought leaders do differently. Hi folks, my name is Douglas Kruger. I'm a professional speaker and the author of several business books. We've had the pleasure of meeting before. I got to present for you at one of Seika's recent knowledge cafes, Friday knowledge cafes, where I spoke on the topic of one of my books called Poverty Proof. You might recall if you attended that session that Penguin asked me to write a book on how to virus-proof your business, and that was accepted by Penguin in the UK and in fact published globally. Today we are speaking about your business, your brand, and how you can position yourself as a top-level expert. So this year, Seika is helping you to prepare for the future, and to that end, we have teamed up to create this series of learning videos about how you can elevate your brand, clever ways to innovate within this landscape, and how you can stand out and prosper this year. So a simple question: how are you doing at the moment? How are you holding up? I've spoken to business leaders who have had a fabulously prosperous year, an extraordinary one, and I've spoken to others who are shell-shocked and who are feeling battered and as though they will never recover. What is the state of your business right now? And perhaps more pertinently, how are you feeling? Do you still have some fight left in you? I sincerely hope so. Folks, when you think about cycles of wealth and poverty in the history of nations, we always see how wealth recovers and prosperity returns, but it is difficult to see it at the time. I always imagine how terrifying it must have been to have lived through, say, the 1930s Great Depression in a nation like the United States, and to have lived with this sense that it would never end, that it would never improve. And you can imagine how real that must have been, having gone through just a couple of years of lockdown and of difficulties in our scenario. And yet, of course, their best days and their greatest prosperity were still ahead of them. And I think the same can be true for us. If you look at the global trend for wealth, right up until the beginning of lockdowns, it was rising internationally. There is no reason we should not continue on that trend. So here's the danger for us right now. The danger is that you're a little punch drunk, that quite possibly you've had more time to think than usual, and instead of thinking of productive, clever, strategic things to do, you've been going around in smaller and smaller circles, psyching yourself out. Folks, if that is the case for you, I hope I can intervene and speak a little hope into your life and give you a few ideas that will be launch pads to get going again. There's nothing wrong with having a lot of time to think, as long as you are using that time in productive ways and that you are doing proactive things that help to build your brand and your business. So, over the course of several upcoming videos, I'd like to give you some useful launch pads. In every industry, in every landscape, there are always a few names, a few brands, a few businesses that rise to the top and become preeminent, that become the thought leadership, that become the icons of that particular world. I always talk about them as being the Schwarzenegger of bodybuilding, the Clarkson of cars, the Elon of innovation, the Oprah of talk show TV, or perhaps my favorite one, the Nigella Lawson of food. My wife and I both watch that show religiously, but for vastly different reasons. Now, in every industry, you'll have these one or two names that rise to the top. And it's interesting to dissect their approach and to discover that they do things differently by design. Seth Godin talks about the idea of building a purple cow business, which is this concept of creating a business, a brand, that stands out on purpose. For most of us, that is extremely counterintuitive. Our heart's desire is to fit into a landscape, to look credible, to look like we are a legitimate part of it. It is a very counterintuitive thing to try to stand out on purpose and to think in that different manner. Yet there are great upsides to doing so by design. And the first is how people talk about your business and your brand, why they recommend you, why they think of you, why you are top of mind. So we're going to combine two worlds as we discuss these ideas over the next few videos. The first is the world of brand, and the next one is the world of innovation. So the one is how people think of you and why they think of you, why that is worth equity to you as a professional practitioner. And the other is how you think strategically and cleverly about creating new things and about tinkering with your brand. I have 2 books on each of those topics. In the world of brand, my books are Own Your Industry and What Makes Them Great. And in the worlds of innovation, they are Relentlessly Relevant and They're Your Rules, Break Them. Each of these videos will have a number of unique ideas, ideas that you can incorporate directly into your business, and I've gone scouring these books and my knowledge base and the world of innovation and branding for the kinds of ideas that work for a professional practitioner. So these ideas are selected to be relevant to you. We're going to look at things like how businesses that essentially do the same thing can differentiate themselves and stand out. What types of communication and what types of messaging lights up the human mind and the human imagination, and what types put it to sleep to the detriment of your brand and your bottom line. And there's a surprising amount of really interesting science behind that. We're going to look at ways to innovate that are radical on the one hand, and ways to innovate that are gentle, incremental, but meaningful on the other. So what is our goal? Well, we're after several things. First and foremost, I would like you to look back on 2021 and 2022 as successful, profitable years for your practice, for your profession, for your brand, for your business. That's the first thing. Secondly, I would like you to experience, frankly, the joy, the reinvigorating spirit of new ideas and of getting results from new ideas. And third, I would like you to stop playing defense. I would like you to stop living inside your mind and waiting to see what happens. And I want you to experience the sense of control when you work a plan of your design and get out there proactively building your business again. It is radically different psychologically to sitting around waiting to see what happens next. Now, as our starting point, I'm going to ask you to do 2 things. The first, they're both simple things, but they are important. And the first one is I'm going to ask you to make the decision to fight for it. Think back, if you will, on the early days of your profession, when you started out learning the ropes, meeting customers, sending your first invoice, doing business for the first time in this world, in this landscape. Can you remember the fear that you felt mingled with excitement? There's always that intense learning curve, and you have those hopes for the future. Well, folks, years have gone by, and you have built a business and a brand. And in a nation where owning businesses is important, where entrepreneurship matters, where running your own concern, carrying out professional activities matters to the welfare of our nation, your business is important, and I'd like you to choose to fight for it. The fact that you are watching this video means that you are still in the ring, you are still pursuing it, and as tough as the times may have been for you, you are still out there fighting. I'd like you to make the decision to fight for it. There's a wonderful scene from The Lord of the Rings in which Frodo is losing hope, and Samwise Gamgee, who is really the true hero of The Lord of the Rings, gives him a little speech in which Frodo asks, "What are we fighting for?" And Samwise says that there's some good in this world and that it is worth fighting for. Folks, what you do contributes to the society around you. It helps people, it contributes to our nation, and it helps your family. And it is worth fighting for. Number 1, I'd like you to make the decision to fight for your business, your brand, your profession. And number 2, I would like you to consider the courage, consider displaying the courage to become a learner, an amateur, and someone who is starting off all over again. If you're looking at the view outside the window here, you might notice that it is a distinctly un-South African landscape. I am technically in the UK, although I'm actually in the Channel Islands on a small island called Jersey right at the moment. And I went down and checked out one of their gyms the other day. Now, in South Africa, I've been going to my local gym for 15 years, and I can do a session there with my eyes closed without even thinking about it. I put on my headphones, listen to an audiobook, and just go through the motions. I walk into a strange new gym here, and everything is different. The layout is different. People are working out elbow to elbow, so it's a whole different social vibe. And I found that because I didn't recognize the equipment, the machinery, the weights, anything, it made me feel like an amateur all over again. And what I did was I gave myself permission to look and feel stupid as I felt my way around. And I found that coming away from that, it actually turned out to be one of the most invigorating and satisfying gym sessions that I've had in a very long time. There's science to back that up. Daniel Kahneman, author of Thinking Fast and Slow, points out that the more often we do something, the more it becomes second nature. And when something becomes habitual, we tend not to focus on it, think about it, or indeed to go very far in our levels of talent in that particular sphere. When you're forced out of your comfort zone and you have to think about it consciously all over again, it changes things. I want you to give yourself permission to be an amateur in this world. If the world of brand building, showing off your name, putting your name up in lights and innovating sounds a little scary to you, well, frankly, good. Now, I'm not going to push you further than you can manage, and these ideas will be right for your industry. But I would like you to give yourself permission to become an amateur again, and to say, all right, I don't know how to do this, but we're going to learn. We're going to look at these ideas, engage with them, try them out, fumble, stumble, fall and scrape your knee, get up and try it again. It will make you feel alive. Don't worry about getting everything right on the first try. Nothing in life works that way. But I invite you to consider, if you think of yourself as purely a numbers person, you are part of a broader world here. Let's talk about your brand. Let's talk about clever ways to innovate and how you can stand out. I invite you to give yourself permission to be a rank amateur all over again. So, in the next few videos, we will get into specific ideas. For now, I'd like you to begin considering these questions. They are important. The first one, as it stands right now, is there anything that makes your business, your brand, your profile more memorable than the rest? If I were considering the CA landscape in general, why might my mind go to you? And if you don't have an answer right now, that's perfectly okay. That is precisely what I will help you to determine and to resolve and to build. But I'd like you to ask yourself that question. Next one. If you think about the most successful practitioners in your industry, what might be your current best estimation of what makes them different? And why are they successful? What is the gap between where you are right now and where you perceive those top players to be? What is your best estimation of the difference involved in those two stages? And the final one. I'd like to invite you to daydream for a moment, and this is quite an important one. We are often so closely involved in the mechanics of running a business that we don't zoom back and think about the business. That's what we're after here. So, what does a premium version of your business, your practice, look like? This is an invitation to think not about survival as we have been doing for the past couple of years, but about an ideal, an ultimate ideal. What's the best version imaginable, and what does that look like? Do you have a picture of that pinnacle success? The behaviors that we employ change radically based on such pictures and such ideals. Take an example. Most people like to think that they have a book in them and that one day they will write a book. Now, imagine the different behaviors involved in these two individuals. Let's say that you have two people who want to write a thriller novel. The first person says, I hope one day I can get a thriller novel published. The second person says, I aim in my lifetime to outperform and outsell Dean Koontz. Now, the scale of things that those two focus on will be radically different based on those two mission statements, their two conceptions of what it is that they're trying to achieve. Each one will learn, plan, think, and act completely differently. So I'm not asking you to build the greatest version of your practice overnight, starting right now, but I am asking you to consider the question, what would that look like? How far could it go? What is the biggest ideal premium version of this for you? Do you have that picture in your mind? I hope you have the courage to think big in spite of the battering from the past couple of years. My task is to aim your concentration toward the specific techniques that you can use to generate that kind of growth. And quite frankly, if I may, to speak a little hope into your life and into your world. I think we could all do with that. So I'll see you soon for video number 2. And until then, a reminder that it matters that we celebrate our small victories. Is your business still standing? Did you make it through the last year, the last round of debit orders? Do you have a new client or more business from an old one? Has your child started school? Are they doing well at school? Have they passed a test? Folks, it's been hard recently. Don't forget to celebrate the small things. We need to remind ourselves how far we've come. And I'm going to try to give you specific ways to go even further. I look forward to seeing you for the next one, as we talk about how to position yourself as an expert and how to innovate like a true thought leader.